With your permission, can we start the live stream?
Yeah. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. We have no 3-minute delegations. Can I get Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Yeah, this is just a notice to everyone here that someone will be recording this meeting in addition to the township's recording. Someone requested that they be allowed to record this meeting, which is permissible under our procedural bylaw. That's just a notice. So delegations, 5.1, Jeff Wan, concerns regarding waste transfer site located in Yarker. Jeff, if you want to come up to the table, and if you press the silver button, that will liven up the mic, and the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes. I will do my best. Thank you. Is that the other recording happening? It is. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, Reeve Wise, Deputy Reeve Davison, councillors, CAO White, staff, and fellow citizens here with us tonight and also watching. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to talk about the waste transfer station in Yarker. And what I guess the first question is, why am I doing this and how did I get involved? I've been involved in the fight to prevent the Richmond landfill expansion to take all of Toronto's garbage for about 20 years. And that's been quite a struggle. So as a result of that, I'm probably one of the expert garbologists in the area. And so the community knew about that and asked me to help them with the situation in Yarker. Could I have my slides up? So my hope tonight is that we can go through the background of what happened, how this happened. I can't really explain why it happened, but we can talk about how it happened. And then I'm hopeful that and optimistic that together we can find a win-win solution for the problem. And this would be to the benefit of all of us, for the township, for the community, and for the Westendorps for their business. So we'll talk about that at the end, but I want to start by giving you the background. So could I have the next slide, please?
Just bear with us for a minute.
There we go. So this is it. Probably most of you are familiar with the Westendorp Waste Transfer Facility. There it is in Yarker. It's right at the entrance to the town. You can see one of the neighboring houses right next door. I guess one of the big problems is this facility kind of emerged without anyone in the community knowing that it was about to happen. And coming with it, next slide, please. They are in the transfer business, in the waste business. These are shots taken from their current website. And however, the next slide, please. The off-site impacts have been quite substantial and quite unfortunate. Next. So here's the rodents, the dust, the traffic, the sound. Next slide, please. So the question is, how did this happen? How can you get a waste transfer station in a small hamlet like this? And it turns out that if you know, we have our zoning laws, and this is the way that we determine how we organize our businesses and our communities together, so that we put all of the industry in one place, people living in another place, farming in another place, and try and have a compatible way of running the neighborhood. There is a provision called the legal nonconforming use. What happens is, if the zoning changes and you had a prior business there that was legal, you can apply for what is in effect a grandfathering clause, which allows an exception to the new zoning, which would render that illegal. and that's called legal nonconforming use. There are some requirements about this, and we're going to talk about those. If you change the scope or scale of the legal nonconforming use, you have to have approval, and you have to consider the adverse neighborhood effects. Next slide. So we're going to spend a minute on the zoning history of the property. From 1978 to 2000, the property where the Westendorp facility is was zoned C1, highway commercial. And in that zone, salvage yard or transfer stations were not allowed. And the zoning changed in 2000 to the zoning that you see on the chart there, hamlet, rural, and rural industrial, or light industrial. And salvage yard or transfer stations are not allowed in that zoning either. So in order for this business to continue, there had to be an exception made to the zoning. Next slide, please. So in the official plan, and the official plan's where all the zoning rules and regulations are laid out, and as a community, we all get to participate. Stone Mills has an excellent process where we all review the official plan and make our comments. So if you have an application for an extension or enlargement of the nonconforming use, it has to have been legally established prior to the adoption of the zoning bylaw, and the use had to have been continuous and located on lands owned and used in connection with the use when the zoning bylaw was passed. Next slide, please. So any extension or enlargement requires the approval of the Committee of Adjustment. The Committee of Adjustment has a process with public notification and consultation. And they're required to balance the community's interests with those of the person that has the business, considering the creation of undue or increase of adverse side effects, including noise, vibration, fumes, smoke, dust, odors, and so on. So, carry on. Also in the official plan, there are definitions of salvage yard and transfer stations. These are two different things, and they are different from a zoning perspective. So you're allowed to have a salvage yard in certain places, and you're allowed to have transfer station in certain other places, but they're different. Next slide, please. So if we look at the Martin property, so this is the property immediately adjacent to the Westendorp facility. You can see that little pie-shaped piece there. That was owned by Kathy Martin and sold to the Westendorps in 2007. Next slide, please. The other piece of property where the main operation was acquired and registered on December the 1st, 2000. Both of these dates are after the zoning was changed. So the Westendorps acquired the property after the zoning had changed. So the problem is, we've seen that the requirement is that the property be owned in order to qualify for legal nonconforming use. Next slide, please. So here's where the property line used to be, and how you can see how close the house is in the picture on the left. So when you establish a new business like the transfer station, there should be 100-meter setbacks to the business, according to the zoning of waste businesses. And there just isn't 100 meters available on this piece of property to have those setbacks. Next slide, please. So these two guys were involved in all of this back then. Roger Hogan worked for the township, and he was the deputy clerk. And Glenn Tunnick was the planning consultant. Most municipalities have an independent planning consultant they use for planning issues, and Glenn Tunnick was the one here. Glenn Tunnick has retired, and he no longer has his practice, but I was able to contact him, and Roger Hogan has retired as well. So this is an exchange that Roger Hogan wrote to Glenn Tunnick in September 2007. Next slide. And this is an excerpt from that letter. He says it's important, this is now the planner, back to the planning consultant, saying it is important to note that it would appear that lands in question and owned by Mr. Westendorp were zone C1 being highway commercial. If Mr. Westendorp was operating a salvage yard prior to the adoption of the bylaw in the Township of Stowe Mills, this would mean that his operation was not in conformity of the permitted use of that zone as indicated by that bylaw. This being the case, then in accordance with that section of the bylaw, the legal non-conforming use would not apply to these lands. So here's Roger Hogan in September 2007 saying that it isn't going to apply. So next slide. Continue, because we'll save time that you can read this if you want. Next slide. So Hogan goes to council in September 2007 and describes the reasons why this legal non-conforming use would not apply. This is taken from the council minutes. And he also says it's important to note that subject to the conformity, if it did apply, then the regulations would regulate the setbacks from the street and neighboring properties. So here's Hogan to council in September 2007. There's a resolution. Next slide. The resolution is that council defer any approval of the proposal to allow a recycling drop-off depot on these lands, now owned by the Westendorps, pending a planning report by the municipal planning consultant. And that report is missing, and I don't think it was ever done. So council asked for this report. It didn't happen. Next slide. And then suddenly in October, Roger Hogan reverses himself and issues a letter granting legal non-conforming use to the Westendorps. He has no authority to do this. Council has not approved it. There's been no review by the Committee of Adjustment. There's been no public notification. In fact, there was not a prior legal use on the property because it was against the zoning laws at the time. And that's how it happened, but we don't know why this happened, why that letter was sent. But this is sort of the crux of the problem. This is what the Westendorps have in their hand. John?
Just a heads up, Jeff, you've got 5 minutes. Can you do it in 5?
I'm going to be really struggling, but I'll try.
No, I'll extend it. It's important, but just
Yeah, I'll try and go faster.
Keep it brief. Yeah.
Okay, so this is important, that this part of it is particularly important. This is one of the documents. Next slide. Next. So Westendorps go to the MOE and ask for approval to run this salvage yard, and the MOE specifically prohibits the transfer station. So they say, you know, the total volume of the material must be no more than 5% sent to a landfill. Next slide. So around this time, Tim Fisher, who is a citizen and living in Yarker, and also a planner, wrote to council and identified all the problems with this approval that had been given. Next slide. Next slide. You can read that. There is a paragraph at the end. He says, you know, if council persists in this approach, there'll be a cloud. There could be a cloud over the property title and potential future legal problems. And that's exactly where we are now. Next slide. Next slide. So this, there's a resolution in council again. Further investigation, he says, Mr. Fisher expressed concern about the Westendorp Depot, and the decision to grant non-conforming status was not correct. And he urged council to review the proposal and abide by the Planning Act. The resolution to council was further investigation by the municipal planning consultant, Glenn Tunnick, be undertaken to determine whether the points brought forward by Mr. Fisher are indeed valid. That report was never done or is missing. So here we have council hearing about all the problems, asking for this report, and somehow it didn't happen. Next slide. So later, now we're, I don't know, some weeks after this original letter's given, council receives, they're frustrated by now because they're kind of stuck since the approval's already out there. So Roger goes back to council and says, you know, there's a draft copy of the site plan will be presented to council prior to adoption. And the council motion is, council hereby directs, except for the implementation of the site plan control, the decision to accept the legal nonconforming status as a transfer station is considered final. No site control plan was ever established. Next slide. So now, coming up to 2020, the Westendorps want to sell their waste transfer operation in Westbrook. So they come back to the township and say, please confirm that we have this legal nonconforming use. And the planning department writes this letter, and instead of saying, you know, it's our opinion, they say it could be a transfer station or salvage yard. Again, there's no review by council, there's no review by the Committee of Adjustment, no public notification, but now there's approval from the township to have a transfer station. So Westendorps go back to the ministry and apply for a license to run the transfer station. Also, there was no discussion on setbacks or all of the requirements that would normally be part of having a waste operation. Whether you're in town or out of town, you're supposed to have all these things. Anyway, next slide. Maybe for the sake of time, we'll skip through some of these other points. Carry on, next slide. Today, you know, it was a reusable, recyclable center. When it was a sort of a Saturday opening place, you could pick up used construction material, windows, and so on. It was compatible, fairly compatible with the community, but now it's a waste transfer and asbestos handling facility today. And they sold their transfer station in October 2020. Next slide. Let's carry on. There's just some more background here. Today it's a waste transfer site, licensed to handle 250 tons of waste a day. That would be 40 trucks a day if they ever get to that level. The size of the property they have there, they could never handle that amount that they're licensed to handle. Next slide. So it's there, and the offsite impacts persist, and these have been particularly felt lately because the Highway 41 waste transfer station is closed. So most of the traffic is going over to Westendorps. And it's going from morning and, you know, first thing in the morning until late at night. Next slide. Was there a legal salvage yard? It could, not according to the zoning. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. We'll just come to the summary here. There's some missing information. The township has been great in terms of going through the archives and getting us this material. I spent a lot of time crawling through it all. We're missing, you know, some of the fundamental things, though. What are the exchanges that led to the renewal in 2020? Planning reports. The Westendorp presentation to council is missing. So, and we also have an FOI request to the MECP, the Ministry of the Environment, and I'm expecting that any day now, which will give us a lot more background about their side of this. Okay, next slide. This is a draft letter that Glenn Tunnick, the planner, wrote for, to be sent. He recommended that this be sent, which would decline the legal nonconforming use to the Westendorps, and this letter was never sent. So we have the planner telling us that this should not have happened, and it went ahead. Next slide. So this is a summary of the problems. The salvage yard was illegal prior to when the property was zoning changed. The property was not owned by the Westendorps at the time of the zoning change. The township processes were not followed. Several prior activities happened there, so it didn't have continuous use. The planning consultant's advice was not followed. The definition of salvage yard and waste transfer station are different, as noted in the official plan. Requirements for waste transfer detailed, like setbacks, etc., were not enforced. The waste transfer operation is completely incompatible with the neighboring hamlet. The change in scope and scale did not go to the Committee of Adjustment, so there's no site control plan, no Committee of Adjustment, no public notification or consultation. So that's kind of the mess that we're in. Next slide. So what's the remedy for all this? So we've got to find a way without ending up in a big, expensive legal battle. There's quite a risk, I think, for the township here in terms of liability. There's a risk for Westendorps in that they could be ordered by a court to revise their operation or to shut down their operation. And my recommendation is that we ask the staff of the township, and I'd be happy to help if I can, to find a business reason for Westendorp to relocate, to find another block of land that could be properly zoned for waste, where there are no neighbors, where there's room for expansion, where they'd have the ability to receive wet waste, extend their hours of operation and grow their business, and have positive community relations. I realize that that will be a tough sell to Westendorp, but the alternative might not be very attractive to them either. And there's always a risk if we get into a costly legal battle. I think it would be costly for the township, it would be costly for Westendorps, and it would certainly be costly for the community, and it would take a lot of time. While this is going on, we continue to have the problem of the adverse side effects. I believe there is no downside for anyone by trying to find a solution that's a win-win for everybody. So it's something I'm recommending that council consider. I think the community is prepared to wait more. It's been taken us a long time to get this far, but I think the community is prepared to wait for the township to have a hard try with the Westendorps at getting it sorted before considering all the number of options. There's a number of options that could be taken by the community as a result of this. So it's a pretty straightforward case. That's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Jeff. Could I get a motion to receive Jeff's presentation first off from Deputy Reeve Davison and Councillor Milligan? All in favor? Anything further, Council? Any comment or
Any questions?
any questions? Yes, certainly. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Woodcock.
Just as you are the clerk, and my understanding is that this was it was a deputy clerk that sort of did this. How regular or irregular is it for a clerk to say, in his opinion, this is allowed without Committee of Adjustment approval or without council approval?
Through you, Reeve Wise, I can't speak to whether that's regular or irregular. It's my understanding that Deputy Clerk Hogan did provide some support in the planning department, and then it was contracted out as well.
Anyone else? Well, I'll step out of the chair at this point and ask Doug to perform the chair function. I'd like to move that we get a staff response to Jeff's presentation, possibly with legal opinion, if that's deemed appropriate and necessary, and bring it back as soon as possible to our next or subsequent council meeting, whatever is feasible. When to second that? Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, you're supposed to say that, Doug.
All in favor? Favor? Carried.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks very
Okay.
much, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, bylaws and resolutions. We have a procedure bylaw before us, and the motion would be to provide rules governing order and procedures of council and committees of the Township of Stone Mills, and to repeal bylaw 2023-1184 and bylaw 2020-1014, and that bylaw 2024 to be numbered, being a bylaw to provide rules governing the order and procedures of council and committees of the Township of Stone Mills, and to repeal bylaw 2023-1184 and bylaw 2020-1014 be enacted and passed, and the Reeve clerk be authorized to sign and seal. Can I get that on the floor, please? Councillor Milligan, Councillor Lalande, and Brandy, did you wish to speak to this?
No further comments on this, just if there's any questions about it, happy to answer.
Any questions? Yes, Councillor Lalonde.
Not really a question, just, we've looked at this bylaw quite a few times in the last while, and I was just wondering, in the future, when we're presented with like a second or third draft or whatever, that the document could be highlighted reflecting the changes that were brought forward from the previous version? Because I'm looking it over and going, where did it change? What's different from the last time we looked at this? And I'm having a hard time pulling that out. That's all I would suggest. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that feedback, Councillor Lalonde. Because it was such a big overhaul. Sorry, I don't know. There we go. Because it was such a big overhaul of the bylaw, it was hard to do a red line revision. But any future amendments to it will do a red line revision so you can see the changes.
Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Good work, Brandy. That was quite a chore. Okay, staff reports. Township Clerk 8.3.1, Pregnancy and Parental Leave Policy for Members of Council. The recommendation is that the report entitled Pregnancy and Parental Leave Policy for Members of Council be received and that bylaw 2024 to be numbered, being a bylaw to adopt a pregnancy and parental leave policy for members of council, be enacted and passed, and the clerk and reeve be authorized to sign and seal. Can I get a motion to put that on the floor, please? Deputy Reeve Davison, Councillor Woodcock, Brandy.
Through you, Revise. Nothing further to add to the report, just that this is a required policy to have under the Municipal Act. So just a housekeeping item to get it passed by council.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this bylaw? Yes, Councillor McDonald, go ahead.
I was just wondering if it maybe could be written that if the person is absent for a parental leave, that maybe we could put Jane Doe absent parental leave. So if anyone's reading the minutes, they would know why is that person absent so much. That's just a thought.
Comment on that, Clerk? Yeah.
No comment on that. If that situation comes up where someone is taking a parental leave, we can address it through the minutes.
Thank you. Anything further? Yes, Councillor Land.
I'm wondering if we might consider under item 4.2E, which is on page 5, adding, it says a member on leave reserves the right to participate as a member at any time during their leave. And I'm wondering if we could include the phrase either face-to-face or on Zoom. We have created an opportunity for counselors to participate through Zoom, and it might be an opportunity for the person on mat leave who's receiving emails and all the communications could participate through Zoom. I mean, I know there's a voting thing issue there, but certainly then when it comes to members in attendance, you could put their name and say participating through Zoom or whatever. Just to clarify that that is something they can do.
Through you, Revise, their participation would be guided through the procedural bylaw, so I don't foresee why they wouldn't be able to participate.
Anything further? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. The next item, 8.3.2. This is something we've dealt with before. It's the British Home Child Proclamation request. The recommendation that Council receive the report and that Council proclaims September 28th as British Home Child Day, and the proclamation be posted on our website, media platforms, and that British Home Child Day flag be flown for the month of September. Can I get that on the floor, please? Councillor Land, Councillor Woodcock, any discussion? We did this last year. It's remarkable. Part of the information says that approximately 4 million people in Canada are descendants of British home children. That's 10% of our population. It's quite incredible if that's in fact the case. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And thanks to Glenda Griffin, who brings this forward annually. It has, I'm sure, personal reasons for doing so. 8.3.3 is a request for the use of the Tamarind Skate Park. Recommendation that council receive this report, and that council supports the request by Daniel Mathieu. Can I get that on the floor, please? Councillor Milligan, Councillor Woodcock, any discussion? Yes, Councillor Woodcock.
Just, the report says the 19th, but the letter says the 21st. Just which day is it? It's probably, the 21st is a Saturday, so that's probably the date. Just wanted to, okay.
Yes, I believe it's the Saturday.
Okay, anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, 8.3.4, this land, a material event, special event permit and agreements. The motion would be that council receive the report titled This Land, a Material Event, Special Event Permit and Agreements, and that council waive the special event permit as required under Bylaw 2019-965 for this event. The council authorize the CAO and REEV to enter into an agreement with the Canadian Urban Institute, should funding be approved. And 3, that staff be directed to draft an agreement between the township, the event organizers, and the event organizers outlining the process for distributing any money received through the grant, and that the CAO and REEV be authorized to sign said agreement. Can I get that on the floor? Councillor Milligan, Deputy REEV Davison. Any discussion? Is it simply a matter, if I can ask, that there wasn't time to complete a special event permit?
Through you, Reeve Wise, that's correct. By the time staff became aware of the size of the event, the special event permit requires 30 days notice to go through the permit process, and we had about a little bit less than 20 days, so we didn't think we had the time to go through the whole process.
Thank you. And the Canadian Urban Institute, is that a federal government body or is it an independent organization?
Through you, Reeve Wise, I'm not sure if it's an entity of the federal government, but I know it's funding received through the federal government.
I see, okay. Any discussion on this one? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Boy, the cluster flies are certainly busy up here. It's that time of year. Manager of Public Works and Emergency Services, purchase of 2 tandem plow trucks. The recommendation is that council receive this report entitled Purchase of 2 tandem plow trucks, and the council directs staff to sign a purchase order to secure the purchase of 1 tandem plow truck and 1 tandem plow truck roller pro. And in the absence of our Public Works manager, Jason, did you want to address this one?
Through you, Reeve Wise, the purchase of these vehicles is overdue, so we're looking to try and get that done as quickly as possible. The pricing that we received is an upper limit to approve. We're optimistic that once the finalized pricing is submitted, that it will come in at a lower cost than what's listed. And if it does exceed the costs outlined here, we will regroup and come back to council.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have got a mover and seconder for that. Can we do that now? Councillor Milligan, Councillor Land, any discussion on this one? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 8.4.2 Boundary Road Signage Survey. The recommendation is that council receive this report and that council direct staff to proceed with the purchase of new boundary signs using the current logo and no slogan. Can I get a mover on that one? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Woodcock, any discussion? Yes, Councillor Woodcock.
Yeah, just on the design, it says Land O'Lakes Tourist Region. That as a body no longer exists. So I don't know if we want to consider not having that because it was a tourism body that was, you know, lots of marketing things, but I think it doesn't exist for like the last 3 years. I think maybe even 2020, maybe 4 years, it ceases to exist. So just something to consider if we want to put it on there.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I don't know if it's referring to it in any sort of current status. It's just kind of, that's what happened before. Is that not right? Jason, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so thank you through you, Revise. The mock-up that's provided is the original from the survey, but the recommendation is to leave that part off. I think that was identified as the slogan or the tagline to be underneath. The survey results were mixed and limited, so we don't feel confident that a significant change to our logo or selecting a permanent slogan is advisable at this time. So we're going to simply go with the welcome to the Township of Stone Mills and the current logo, with the intent that there'll be space left on any signage to add a slogan or any additional fire ban signage or whatnot underneath. So we have that flexibility going forward.
Yeah,
Yes, go
just
ahead.
thanks for clarifying that, because I thought it meant a different slogan that was out and that was there, so thank you.
Anything further on that one? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Okay, section 8.5, Chief Building Official, 8.5.1. Oh, is that the defective one on the table there? Okay, yeah. Not you, Jake, but Mike. 8.5.1 is results of food and beverage concession request for proposal at Stone Mills Rec Center, and the recommendation is that council accept the information report and that council direct staff to enter into a one-year lease agreement for the canteen area of the Stone Mills Rec Center with Scoopers to provide food and beverage services at the Stone Mills Recreation Center based on the terms of the submitted request for proposal submitted by Scoopers. Can I get a motion to put that on the floor, please? Councillor Fenwick, Councillor Milligan. Go ahead, Jake.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Put out a request for proposal. It'd been many years since Marg Weiss and the Devonte room had that space leased. It had informally been used kind of without any money changing hands for a few years now, and we received our request and that the person who kind of was kind of kicking around doing it didn't actually submit a proposal. Scoopers did, and I met with Scoopers during the requests for proposal timelines, and they said they'd actually been thinking about this canteen area for a while, and they were very interested, even if there wasn't a lot of business maybe left at the arena. That's something that I'm not sure if you're aware, but I mean, it isn't a very lucrative space anymore. I actually don't know if it was ever a lucrative space. I remember as a child going there, and it was part of minor hockey that you just had to go there twice a year and run it just as a service to your community when I was a child. So, yeah. As part of the report, they weren't sure just what their incomes would be. It's pretty limited, the amount of payment for the lease. It's set at 15%, which might be difficult. I'm kind of relying on honesty from the Scoopers owners. And yeah, as part of it, they would like to kind of increase their brand. They sell pizza a lot, definitely ice cream during the summer, but they'd like to sell their pizza out of this location and then maybe increase their brand as a pizza supplier to the community. Happy to take questions on this from council.
Any questions? Yes, Councillor McDonald.
I just wondered what that means if someone rented the upper stairs because they have a lease. Are they able to use that kitchen at all, or is it off limits to anyone else?
Yeah, good question, Councillor McDonald. With this space leased to this to Scoopers, then that kitchen is not like a kitchen at a community hall. It is theirs, and it's not something that the public can walk in and you know, throw some stuff in the freezer and then use that kitchen. that's part of the lease agreement, that it's their space and no longer community space. That kitchen is no longer, part of the rent. You can definitely still rent the banquet hall. You just can't serve food out of this kitchen. It's their kitchen now as part of this lease.
Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Fenwick.
Just to remind me, Jake, so the banquet hall section, obviously that's the tiled section, and it's been a while since I've been up there. On the far left-hand side, is there not, there's a separate space there that opens and closes with the service door, is there not? Is there a cooler in there? I'm trying to recall if there's like a separate bar entity on the far left corner. Is that's still there, I'm assuming? Is it still got a fridge in it? I'm not sure. Okay, so there is that.
Yeah, I'd love to. We have to stop calling it the banquet hall. I called it the banquet hall, sorry. I'm gonna start to call it the second floor viewing area because it doesn't really have a lot of, I think it's a false description to call it a banquet hall. But yes, Councillor Fenwick, there is a place traditionally used as a bar that has kind of a fridge and yeah, I think a lot of the times when we're not using a bar, it just stores items. But yeah, there's a spot with a fridge and that is still available for rent. If you wanted to rent the second floor viewing area and then have some sort of function there and then have a bar, which tournaments do often do there, and then they get a license, a one-day license, liquor license, and they serve alcohol out of the bar, not the kitchen that we're hoping to lease in this proposal.
So in fact, it would, I guess you would almost want to call that the common area. That's a good term, maybe. The viewing area being facing the glass, and then in behind, it's just a common collective area. And I could, just trying to picture that a person could, in the future, as we market that space for rent, like you say, they could get a special occasions permit, they could use the fridge, they could run that area, and then that might actually be of advantage to scoopers because they could potentially open at the same time if they're made aware, and maybe the ones that serve food out of there to the patrons. So you can maybe see that this might work really well in the future.
Yeah, through you, Reeve-wise, one of the things we spoke about was potentially having this area open during pickleball, because there is quite a bit of pickleball traffic back and forth. I'm not sure whether that's going to actually, I don't know how much you could sell during a pickleball, and they're usually down on the slab and not upstairs. But anyways, I mean, there certainly is an evolving spot. There's more things going on, and I'm happy to see the building used more 12 months of the year instead of 8. But yeah, potentially, that area, that second floor viewing area is still viable, if you wanted to have a function there.
Anything further? Councillor Milligan.
Just a quick question about the proposed equipment to purchase. Obviously, I'm assuming that would belong to the township and would go along with the canteen for further use. But if there's any upkeep or anything happens to that equipment, we pay for it, not the user, or how does that work?
Yeah, through you. Yeah, in the past, even when Mark Hart, we usually did, if a freezer broke, we fixed it. Part of this, in my actual, if you read my request for proposal, we were hoping, I mean, that was the instructions that they would pay for the upkeep of refrigerators, appliances, that sort of thing. But in their proposal, they said that they didn't the refrigerator, and the appliances there are long from being new, and they weren't interested in the upkeep of it, and they weren't interested in the upkeep of the appliances, in this space. I guess when you get one proposal, it's hard to sort through it. So,
Anyone else? So The motion then would include, it's to support their response to your request for proposal, including the purchase of these items. So how does that work in terms of our budget? Would that come out of the 2025 budget, Jake, or do we have something in the current year's budget to purchase those items? Because that's going to have to happen in the next month or so, I'm assuming.
Yeah, through Reeve-Wise, my plan was to just, I mean, there's small minor items and not something that would be capital in nature because they're minor, and it's just to basically put it under the operational materials and supplies that has, you know, a large budget every year for things that,
For the community
things like
center.
this up, yeah.
Yeah, okay. As
That
long
was
as
my
we're
plan.
clear on that, because it is a spending item. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And don't move, Jake, because we now have the proposal to install heat pump at the Enterprise Hall. The recommendation being the council accept the information report entitled Proposal to Install Heat Pump System at the Enterprise Hall, and that council directs staff to use surplus funds allocated to the Enterprise Hall to install an air source heat pump system at the hall. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor Land, Councillor Fenwick. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, through your worship, I guess I got to apologize. There isn't many numbers in this report. One of the things that, at this point in time, I don't have a number on exactly how much the 1 or 2 new heat pumps would cost to effectively do this at the Enterprise Hall. I'm still waiting on that. This is just something that's come up in the last couple weeks. But the numbers that have come in, it's basically the price of the project is essentially $125,000 plus HST, which is significantly less, and I'm pretty comfortable that I'm going to be able to do this heat pump project, you know, still well under budget. And I actually still have to, as part of the project, purchase the doors because I'm basically installing customized doors. So I haven't got the price of the doors yet. So I don't have an overall price of the project, but it's going to be significantly under budget, which is kind of shocking to me, but
It's rare.
yeah. But anyways, yeah, so that was kind of why I brought forward a report with maybe less numbers than I usually bring forward as an explainer of why that is. I just think it's a good idea that would increase the functionality of this hall, and you know, it just kind of goes with my trend of generally investing in things that'll save you operational cash down the road with capital. And I'm happy to take questions on what the concept would be to do the outdoor on the west side of the facility, kind of in a place in or around where you enter in to the rear door that will not be something that is really seen by the public. And if there's noise there, it'll be kind of contained by the fact that it'll be kind of in a little alley there besides the rear door, and where kind of an old woodshed on the building was. I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Questions, comments? Anyone? What was the total budget that you had allotted for that project, roughly?
Yeah, so in the background of the report, Reeve-Wise, it was $175,000.
Yeah, okay, so conceivably you've got $50,000 to play with there.
Yeah, it's important to note that I received 5 quotes, and only 2 of them were within that. So it wasn't a bad number, actually. It was a good number. It just happened that we're getting what I think is a good deal by Specialized on-site, who actually did the medical center work at the Tamworth Medical Center, if you guys recall.
Yeah.
Council recalls.
Yeah. Anything further? Yes, Councillor Fenwick.
Just a quick thing, Jake. Thanks for all the hard work on this. I know that you've been working on this for a while, and you applied for a grant for the hall, and then it was denied, and then it came back around, and you've been on it for a year and a half now, have you not? And on and off with this one. And it's nice to see that this is happening. And in John's world, I'm sure he's happy that we'll be removing 2 propane furnaces in exchange for this. That's what's running the facility now. And changing to a heat pump, that is going to, oh, sorry.
Yeah, just, can I'll just interrupt?
Yeah,
So I
something to
won't yank the propane out as part of it. For those who know kind of how heat pumps are installed, they essentially are kind of like an air conditioning unit on the side of the building, and you run tubes and you kind of install them in the plenums above the propane furnaces, and then usually what happens is that the propane becomes the emergency heat on the thermostat. So if you want to run the propane, you'd simply turn it to emergency heat. And it's usually set so that if something goes wrong, the emergency heat does come on. And that's basically, so it wouldn't be jerking the, propane and removing the furnaces, which are not that old. They're 5 years old. It would just simply be basically installing a rad in the plenums of this facility. Anyway.
I guess what I should rephrase that is going to reduce the need for as much propane. It'll be only as a backup, especially the pipes down there liking to freeze. It's a very good idea. And also the fact that this facility, one of the biggest holdbacks would be rented in the summers because it's intensely hot in there. And hopefully this is going to make quite a difference, and I could see a lot more use from it. So thanks for all your hard work on this one.
Anyone else? Well, I think it's great. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Jake. Committee or board reports and minutes? Anyone? New business and statements from members. Anyone? Councillor Land?
Yes, a few members of council had the privilege of going to the Association Municipalities of Ontario conference this August. I thought it was really good. Big turnout, lots of great exhibitors. Learned lots of interesting things. Two things actually that I wanted to bring back to council and would probably like to discuss at budget was toilets that can go up pretty easily in remote areas or areas that don't have water service. And I know that, for example, some of our hamlets don't have any access to public washrooms. Like, I don't know if Newburgh or Enterprise has access to public washrooms. Newburgh doesn't, can't speak to Yarker. And I think maybe it's something worth looking at. They have water, they wash themselves. They have water reservoirs. They're run by solar energy, and they just sounded like a really good fit for our communities, especially when we're attracting tourism now with how well the LNA tourism is running, and we're getting people coming into our communities, but there's no place for them to go to a washroom, aside from the porta potty at Beaver Lake or whatever. So I just thought it would be something interesting to look at budget time. A second item, which is more of a county item than a municipal item, but we've had a lot of concern from residents about speeding through our hamlets and what can be done to traffic calming things. So there was a very interesting exhibitor that I was going to bring the sample, but it's like a rubber mat, and you just put it down on the highway, on the street, and it's got chevrons painted on it, and it has a slight elevation, but it's not like a speed bump. And it's just, it attracts your attention. Number one, the road surface is a little different. You pick it up when the snow comes and store it away, and you put it back in the spring, summer, fall. And it looked like a very interesting and easy way to just slow people down when they're zipping through these hamlets. And the final thing was an alternative to iCompass. I personally like iCompass, but it was certainly worth chatting about a different platform to see what that would look like. So I'll be having a telephone conversation with a gentleman about that type of product. Doug kept telling me not to give them my email and phone number because he said they'll really bug you after the conference, which is very true. Deputy Reeve Davison, I should have listened a little harder when you said that. So it was a really good conference, and I enjoyed every part of it.
Go ahead, Councillor Fenwick.
It just, and thank you for that. When I went to Roma, I was also admiring a lot of traffic calming strategies, and now I'm acutely aware of them everywhere I go. It's funny, I go through the subdivisions in Kingston and I see all these and I'm thinking, that would be great in Newburgh, that would be great here, that would be great there, and I will be paying more attention from here on because not all of them fit properly, but some of them are very intriguing and neat in design. I just wanted to mention something, and I wanted a refresher. I believe it was last year we had a conversation in regards to administrative monetary penalties, also known as AMPs for short, and bylaw enforcement and so on. I've received a few calls lately with people concerned about, and quote unquote, we create bylaws, but we have no ability to enforce them. And I've been looking into that, and I know that we bring in Frontenac bylaw to do their thing and so on. But we were having a discussion, if I recall correctly, about potentially having our own bylaw enforcement officer for enforcement. But I don't know if that's the right answer or not. Maybe we need to step it up with the current solution and just have it more available to us. I don't know what we pay for it. I don't know a lot about it. And I thought maybe it would be something that, since that's what we do, is create a lot of bylaws, maybe we should have a little refresher and staff can bring us forward a short report, nothing immediate, but something that explains how much we pay, how it works, how much we bring in. Does the money that goes, I mean, I do know myself, but maybe everyone else needs to know. Does it go against our tax roll? Does it go to the company that's providing the service? And many other questions. Rather than bothering staff with it, maybe it would be great to have a refresher report on that. So I would put forward a motion for that if that's something that we would entertain, and just so we are all educated. Does that sound great? Oh,
Motion is that staff prepare a report on the bylaw enforcement process.
that would be
In a nutshell?
sufficient. Yeah. I'm waiting for Brandy to draw it up and then read it to me so it reads properly.
Sure. Anyone willing to second that motion? Councillor Land, any discussion? Yes.
Through you, Reef-wise, can I just have clarity on what exactly is being requested in the report? Is it specifically around bringing bylaw enforcement in-house and a financial cost associated with that? Is it the process for issuing administrative monetary penalties? Is it the process from start to finish when we receive a bylaw complaint?
In regards to that, thanks, Brandy. I'm not exactly sure where we left our conversation off in the past. Things got a little crazy for a while and we just went to the side. I would be happy, if it isn't of immense difficulty, to see what we currently have, what we currently spend, whether or not council recommends that it's something, or staff recommends it's something we need to improve on one way or the other, and what our options are, including what would be involved in bringing someone on. And we can go from there, and then at least we have all of the information, if that's something that pleases council.
Through you, Reeve-wise, can I just draft up a quick resolution so we're all clear and I can read it out loud? Okay, through you, Reeve-wise, and correct me if I didn't capture what you're looking for, that staff prepare a report to council on bylaw enforcement services in the township, inclusive of a financial analysis of the cost for contracting bylaw enforcement services to external agencies versus the cost for bringing bylaw enforcement in-house.
That would be sufficient, thank you.
Okay, if everyone's clear on that, I'll call the question. Oh, sorry.
occupation that requires a vehicle and everything else, so I'm not sure if it fits, to be quite honest with you, the dog catcher. Or if it does, it would have to be included with the provided equipment and everything that goes along with it.
So that would be part of your report, I assume? So that would be a consideration.
Through you, Reeve-wise, there's two different services offered by Frontenac Municipal Law Enforcement who we utilize. So they have the by law enforcement side, and then they have a 24-hour animal control side, which is a separate service that we pay a separate price for. So it would be, if we were looking at bringing it in-house, they may still opt to provide the animal control services.
And that would make sense because obviously you're talking about kenneling and there's a lot maybe more to that than meets the ear. The other thing too, this is exactly why I'd like more information and that never came to mind. Thanks, Doug.
Yes, I think, Wendy, did you second that? Yes, I thought so. Okay, any further discussion? We're all clear on what we're asking for here. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Anyone else, statements from members? Then I have a statement. I have two. One is that County Council approved the Lear study in our August meeting and approved it as a sort of pre-budget item for 2025 so that a request for proposal can go out as soon as possible to undertake that study. So another step down that road. I also attended the AMO conference, mostly in my capacity as warden of the county because as such I'm a member of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, which represents 13 upper tier municipalities. We had several delegations with ministers and a couple of delegations with opposition parties. These are largely ceremonial appearances. It's a bit of a ritual. Obviously, you get 15 minutes. You're not going to go down any rabbit holes. So it's a kind of, hi, how are you? Here's the hat that we have in our hand. Give us money and give us policy. That was fine. I differed a bit from Wendy in my experience. Mind you, I wasn't feeling well. I had to go home Monday night. I was there Sunday and Monday, not Tuesday. I found most of the sessions were very general. I thought there was a lack of detail and specifics in the ones that I did attend. The trade show was great, but nothing you couldn't find if you just went online and looked around. The plenary sessions were largely of a political nature. The one speaker, Andrew Coyne, who's a famous pundit on CBC News, was very interesting. He spoke mostly about the U.S. political situation, and it was very insightful, but of no particular practical use. So it would be interesting for me to see how much is totally spent on these conferences. I have not made a habit of going. As you know, I've gone to specific conferences on specific issues like waste management, like energy use, and so on. I attended the online Roma one a couple of years ago during COVID. But unless in my role on county, it's part of my responsibility to attend, I'm not going to attend another one. I think it's a colossal expense for very little return. No disrespect, Wendy, you got something out of it. In terms of a cost benefit, I think it's a massive amount of money, and the biggest beneficiary is a hotel. So that's just my little rant. So at this point, we've reached the end of our open session before our closed meeting. We have to enter into a closed session under Section 239 of the Municipal Act to deal with a matter subject to solicitor-client privilege. Could I get a motion to enter into closed session? Councillor Milligan, Councillor Lalande, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll have to get offline, I guess.
Just one moment.
Okay. So we've come out of closed session. We're going to rise and report. So do we have, we need a vote on the closed session items, so we've already had the motion. All in favor? That's carried. Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So if we can get a mover and seconder that a closed session meeting was held and only closed session items identified were discussed in closed session, and that there is nothing further to report on.
Okay, Councillor Milligan, Councillor Fenwick, any discussion? All in favor? It's carried, thank you. Okay, just need a confirming bylaw now? So we need a confirming bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Stone Mills Township, that this bylaw be enacted and passed, and that the Reeve and clerk be authorized to sign and seal. Can I get a mover and seconder? Councillor Land, Councillor Woodcock, all in favor? It's carried. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Milligan, Councillor McDonald, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you.